Welcome back. Will the government shut down? Who's to blame if it does? And do you even care if the federal government goes dark? T-minus 5 hours. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers will be furloughed. It will cost us taxpayers $6 billion a week. The Centers for Disease Control will stop tracking the worst flu outbreak in years. Senior nutrition programs will come to a pause. The major obstacle, insistence by Senate Democrats to include fixing the DREAM Act, allowing the children of illegal immigrants to stay in the U.S. And joining us for more is Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party, Mikhail Sandstrom of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Steve Sabato, a former news and editorial director here at ABC7 and now president of Sabato LLC, a Sarasota production company. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So what are we to make of this? We just showed an ABC poll that shows that a majority of Americans would blame President Trump and the Republicans if the government is shut down. A CNN poll says that most Americans will blame the Democrats. I'm sure that you, Mikhail and Cheryl, would be on the opposite side of the issues, but what is guaranteed here is that Americans don't want this to happen.
I can guarantee you every single people that even thinks politics day to day or all of us can agree Congress is to blame. Why don't we slash their salaries first? If there's a government shutdown, that's the first thing that should go,
the problem
is
with that,
salaries,
Mikhail, is
because
that
then they may have an incentive to actually care.
The problem with that is that it would be up to Congress to do that.
Right, yes, and that becomes an extremely difficult situation, but
I think
quite frankly, that's really who to blame is both sides.
that's where the responsibility lies. Right now, it's on a Republican watch. It's a Republican president, a Republican Congress. It's actually a Republican government right now. What I think is a little bit questionable is that really the argument about who is to blame, or what the result might be?
Well, there still needs Democrats. There's only 51 senators that are Republicans, so there still needs Democratic support. So it's kind of a throwback to 2013 when the Republicans gave Obama a hard time about the government shutdown. They're taking this opportunity to do the exact same thing back to Trump.
And the Republicans said at the time, we can do better. We can do a better job. Now they're up. Do a better job.
Two questions here. Number one, we alluded to the CNN poll. Cheryl, most Americans polled in the CNN poll say that a shutdown should not be over DACA, which most Republicans and Democrats agree on, but they clearly say you should not shut down the government over this disagreement.
That is a new poll that I had not yet seen. What I had been hearing building up to this was that what you just mentioned at the end, that most Americans are in favor of some action on DACA. I think that number is at about 80%. Now, whether it is a budget issue, whether it's an issue that would lead to a shutdown, that's new polling to me. That's new numbers. I believe that it is an example of the kicking the can down the road that Americans are finally just becoming intolerant with.
Yeah,
that
Steve,
it's time to solve that problem.
Steve, whenever you read our viewer comments, so many people say, why can't both sides compromise? Well, but when you look at what the issues are, the president wants money for the wall. The Democrats are not going to go for that, and there you do have a large segment of the House that is not going to go for DACA.
Well, I think that's true, but I also think that that both parties were close to a deal. I think that the Republicans and the president were willing to make some compromises. You know, the Democrats were willing to make some compromises, and had it not been for our president dropping another tweet bomb, they might have been able to come to an agreement on that. But to answer your original question, why is this happening, and what do the American what's the American public think? I think the answer to that is that they don't know. The American public doesn't really understand this, and this is really all about politics and not about policy.
Okay, we have to just take a quick break.
I was going to agree with the social animosity.
We're just getting warmed up, obviously, and we'll have much more on the week in Washington right after the first alert forecast. Stay with us. We are talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more is Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Manatee Democratic Party, Mikhail Sandstrom, of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Steve Sabato, a former news and editorial director here on ABC7. And let's continue our discussion for a moment about the looming government shutdown. Mikhail, I couldn't help but notice a clip that some of the networks keep playing of President Trump several years ago when there was a government shutdown, and him saying this is a matter of a lack of presidential leadership when it came to Obama, because Obama was the man in charge. Doesn't the same hold now true for him?
Well, I think that there's Democrats hold a lot of social antagonism towards the president,
and Republicans didn't back
and Republicans indeed had. So you often have to wonder how many people, as Steve mentioned earlier, are willing to go for policy rather than just kind of getting mixed up in this like blame game of back and forth. It just seems to be not as productive as just cracking down to, at least he met with Schumer today, and hopefully that there was some progress made. But again, though, I think there's a lot of animosity, and they want to see President Trump fail. And the markets certainly have showed that it's tremendous success right now.
Yet, there's one story here, a new Gallup poll shows that President Trump's 38% job approval rating is well below what would be expected based on Americans' views of the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, where are they polling this job approval? Where's the numbers coming from? Because if it's coming from California, it's probably going to be different numbers than Florida or Michigan or North Carolina.
Kind of scientific.
Kind of scientific, but I'd like to see the specifics on that. However, he's still 1 year into inauguration. The markets are doing well. Let's see what happens once people get more money back from their tax returns. Perhaps the poll numbers will change.
Steve, another Gallup poll says that 42% of Republicans consider news stories that cast doubt about the president or political groups in a negative light are fake news. But a corresponding figure is only 17% for Democrats. Obviously, we have a problem now in terms of people only believing what they want to hear when, there are a lot of good journalists out there trying to accurately report what is going on.
Well, you're right. I think there's some fantastic investigative work that's being done in all media, but at the same time, we have a couple of very fundamental problems. One is just over coverage. Okay, I mean, we have so much Trump coverage that I think the public is starting to shut down.
But let me ask you,
they've had enough.
How many people have unfollowed?
Hold on one second. But let me ask you this. Is there so much Trump coverage because journalists are covering him, or is it because the president is doing things that are so outrageous that it deserves getting covered?
And intentionally doing
no,
those
Alan,
things.
Please don't be naive. You're in this business, okay? The reason there's so much Trump coverage is because the audience watches it. It's all about ratings, okay? The reason CNN is obsessed with Trump is because their ratings are up, and I promise you, the minute the ratings go down and people decide they don't want to hear it anymore and they start turning off the TV set, they will watch something else.
But don't you think it's all about ratings to the president also? Isn't that why we're building up to this big finale that may happen tonight? It's like The Bachelor's going to choose his bride tonight, or the survivor's going to be named on the island.
That's the great irony, is we have a president who was obsessed with media coverage, who literally starts his day watching Fox News, and the collusion between these two forces has resulted in an obsessive coverage. And another thing is going on, and whether you call it fake news or you call it Nine News, there's a great book that was written in the wake of O.J. Simpson called Warp Speed. And they did an analysis on the type of coverage that the 24-hour news machines had to use to cover 24 hours a day of coverage. And what they found, defining news as something new that has happened, something that hadn't happened the day before, that the balance between analysis, opinion, and actual news was swinging away from the news. And we are now in a situation on the network cable news outlets where the vast majority of coverage is not really news. It's opinion and it's analysis.
And
Notable
it's not
event.
identified as such.
Notable event, weather, and news. But now the new generations are getting their news from different sources. They're going on social media. Now put yourself in two perspectives, someone far left and far right. And then they're looking at news on social media. Who's going to hit unfollow on one certain side of the news, and the other side, who's going to, they're never ever going to even be able to see what the other people are thinking, because now we've been able to individually approach news and expose ourselves to what we want to hear, not necessarily what we should hear.
But all of this entire conversation now has an impact in terms of how America goes to the polls, how Suncoast residents go to the polls. And we keep on seeing new public opinion surveys that show that Democrats hold a huge lead on a generic congressional ballot, and that the midterm math looks similar to 2006. If you remember what happened there, George Bush lost Congress, and that had a huge impact. So whatever is going on here has a real impact on how people on the Suncoast are going to vote. Cheryl?
Absolutely, and that's, I feel that I say that every time I come here for this discussion. The excitement, the enthusiasm, the people coming off the sidelines, people knocking on our door, calling us on the phone, that we didn't see in the buildup to the 2016 election, we are seeing now. We are seeing voters who say, I can't do this anymore. Up at the Manatee County Fair this last week, we have had people come up to our booth and say, I've never been active before, but I'll be at the march in Sarasota on Saturday.
Let me ask you all this question, because if you go back a couple of years when the situations were reversed and President Obama was in his first midterm, it was the height of the Tea Party movement. The Republican strategy was just say no to everything that President Obama proposed. Right now, what are the Democrats proposing in terms of the counter-argument to what President Trump and the Republican Congress are doing?
Well, I think you're seeing right now, we're proposing a final action on DACA. We're proposing the Children's Health Insurance Program. We are ready to go with the infrastructure. Infrastructure was all the talk after the tax bill passed at the end of just what, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. You haven't heard infrastructure being mentioned in this build-up to the budget. Democrats are what Democrats have always believed in. We've believed in the working person. We believe in health care. We believe in saving health care. We believe in education. We believe in getting jobs that provide a living wage. We've seen this movement in some of the states where people eligible for Medicaid have to have a job. If you have a job, you shouldn't have to be eligible for Medicaid. You should make enough that you can provide your own health insurance.
What's so complex about the Democrats just making sure the government doesn't shut down and then getting this immigration bill in one entirety written by itself? I'd like to be optimistic about that.
But you know, in legislative bodies, when a minority only is able to exert influence when they could put it in a situation where something has to get done. You pass a continuing resolution or a budget, then why would Republicans take up DACA?
We'll be doing it
do
again
a temporary. The issue now is having a temporary resolution to DACA, but I think that really, when it comes down to it, it's a leap of faith that the Democrats can take, because Trump is not necessarily going to completely go against Democratic ideas that the senators are trying to spin, the Republicans are spinning. He more or less is there to make things happen. And I think if Democrats show faith in him, he'll show faith back.
Steve, Cheryl talks about the energy in the local Democratic parties, and we do see that all over the place. But are you convinced that is going to translate to how elections, results are on the Suncoast and other places that are deeply red?
That's a great question, Alan. I think there's two parts to that. One is the immediate, which is, I think, yes, we're going to see a very significant shift and significant gains by the Democrats short term.
But in Florida, on the Suncoast?
I don't want to go through specific races one by one, but I think it is happening in Florida as well. But on a larger level, in terms of voter confidence, in terms of the public confidence and faith in the institutions of government, I think there's a loss of confidence in Republicans and Democrats, and that is the real problem.
Pox on everyone's house. All right, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. So, Mikhail, what do you want folks who are watching us tonight to walk away from this conversation with?
Well, you know, the Dow Jones has broken 32 times all-time high in 2017, so the markets are happy. The money is being come back. Now our corporate tax rate's going to go down to 21%, which is not just Fortune 500 companies. It's anybody at mom and pop shops, restaurants, stores. There's going to be more money coming into the economy, more people are going to have money in their paychecks, and that's going to equal happiness.
Steve, put this in perspective, because these facts are good for the country. They are being reported, but also what is being reported now on places like CNN, the New York Times, is the issue of the porn star who is claiming that she had an affair with the president years ago, after his last child was born. Is this relevant to anything?
I think what it's relevant to is the general collapse of confidence in the pillars of our society. That includes the Congress, that includes the president, that includes us, the media, and there is a rise of cynicism and apathy, the likes of which we have not seen.
But still, there is an important issue there that you say you are curious about.
Well, I think that if you're interested in the direction that our country is headed in, then one should be curious. But I'm saying that the overwhelming impact of all of this is to get people just fed up with it. I think they're tired of it, and they're ready for a change.
I think he might have gotten the idea from Bill Clinton.
We wanted to give Cheryl a take.
But I do think that it would be a mistake to disregard the fact that we do have an unstable situation in the White House, whether it's due to incompetence, whether it's due to vanity, whether it's due to what I was talking about earlier, wanting to be just a movie star, whether it is a personality disorder, whatever it is. And I've lost, I don't even know what I think it is anymore, but whatever it is, we have instability in the leadership, and that's something that the news media, that's why we have a news media, is to cover that.
We have 10 seconds.
Okay, well, I was going to say that if allegedly Trump did have an affair, perhaps he got the idea from Bill Clinton.
The what about that, huh?
Thanks a lot. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on language restrictions. The Centers for Disease Control is banning terms like science-based, diversity, and transgender. It's happening here in Florida, too. The unwritten policy of Governor Rick Scott to state employees is not to use the word climate change. So we went to Facebook to hear what some of you have to say. And Karen says, not using certain phrases does not make climate change, science-based facts, diversity, or transgender population disappear. These are real. You can't hide from reality for very long. But Joe says, but Obama's administration banned words like Islamic extremist and Muslim terrorist. Mary Beth says, like changing or admitting words changes the facts. Childish. Time to grow up. There is climate change, global warming, transgender people, etc. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired. Just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Cheryl Wilson is the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party. Mikhail Sandstrom is with the Sarasota Republican Party. And Steve Sabato is the former news and editorial director here at ABC7.